the spot.
Well, my first is, as I said just a minute ago, is CTE and is workforce development. And I think that the best way for us to achieve that is through collaboration with our school system, as well as with the county and with the state, quite honestly, and to see what that kind of partnership, as well as with the private sector. I think that oftentimes we try to take things on by ourselves and don't appreciate the private sector to the degree that they can be with partners in something like this. I think that our, of course, fire and safety, first and foremost, as well as our utilities, because those are the basic first line services that we provide in addition to education. And I do think at some point we have got to have a serious conversation about these projects that take us to the next level. You know, we've talked about them for years now. And if we're not going to do anything about them, let's take them off of our scope of work and let's focus on just the day-to-day nitty-gritty of it. I think that, you know, there are ways to package some of these things and to generate revenue streams to support them. I think we've just got to be creative, and we've got to find those ways and be open to how we generate those revenue streams. And so I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know that I can add anything to all this conversation. It's all great stuff. And, you know, obviously it does take funding. And I think that's got to be a major objective that we have to truly make a huge effort on trying to get the funding for a lot of these projects. Great conversations.
Malin, I would add just one thing. Pat Scholl brought up a great point in our networks meeting this month, and it's that, you know, when we talk about workforce development, you know, we're still talking about the opioid crisis. And to Margaret's point about the early brain development being so essential, and the point that he made is that as a region, we really don't have the facility nor the capability to provide what we need to provide. And so I think in the name of regionalism, this is something that we should really take a look at as to how we serve our underserved and our neighbors and friends that are working from a disadvantaged position. And he made a really great point that we need to, as a region, take a look at the facility aspect or the lack thereof, and how we can address some of these social issues. You know, people want to say, well, we want to focus on economic development, but I will agree with Margaret. Absolutely, this is economic development, because we can't get people into the workplace that can't pass a drug test, that can't show up on time, or that have suffered through such adversity that they're so traumatized that they can't focus on job performance. So I would like for us to really begin the conversation with our county and our sister cities all around us as to what we can do, how we could collaborate to put together some type of facility and programming once and for all to begin trying to address this. And I think our state would be very open to this conversation as well.
Lee, to add to that was a conversation a couple of weeks ago when Congresswoman Hashbarger called in, and that conversation there was talked about for several minutes. So absolutely, we need to move that forward.
So Phil Rowe talked about the facility in Greenville being repurposed, so for some mental health stuff. Also, just FYI, and it's been said before, the adverse childhood experiences, trauma, higher levels of those are associated with higher levels of addiction. So that's also helping with that platform of development, helps to reduce the addiction.
Do you want me to ask my questions? Now, Vince, you got anything? I mean, anybody else? Before I just got a couple of questions to ask about a couple of odds and ends stuff.
Go ahead. I think a lot of what's been was on my list has been covered with the housing, the CTE. There's, I think it's all been covered in the conversation. So good stuff.
I think we're all on the same page on all those things.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask if we could get, or if we could just get a one-page briefing, very simple, about the history, back years ago about sewage problems that were part of Boone Lake. That's one thing. And evidently there were some resolutions back then, years and years and years ago, way prior to all of our times. It'd be nice to know exactly what that's all about. I wanted to, there was also some correspondence from, may have been one or several of our citizens about the Beaver Creek South, hold on a second, I made a note of Beaver Creek South Greenway Trail and the continuation of that. And I was, if we got some information on that, it could be just a one paragraph explanation on that and where we've been and where we're going. Is there something left to do? What is there left to do and where that fits? Or can you tell us, Bill?
Yeah. This is the project that we talked about earlier during our CIP presentation. This is the Trail and Greenway, and that first initial stage of it that would go from Roosterfront Park down to Bristol Motor Speedway. And then the first phase of that project would be from Bristol Motor Speedway along Beaver Creek North up to the Avoca Christian Church or somewhere in that vicinity. And then from there, I think we had it broken apart into three different elements. But that's what that conversation is about. And you're right, there was a letter to the editor probably a week or so ago now talking about that. But I think for you all, the next presentation, once our engineering staff completes the design of that project, exclusive of any pedestrian bridges across Beaver Creek, then we would have that presentation to council. They're in the survey process now of detailing the easements that would need to be acquired. But once that's finalized, have the conversation with council, and that would be part of a work session presentation. And then shortly after that, we need to have a community conversation about that trail. And again, I think there'll be proponents. I think there will be individuals in opposition to it, just depending on where you are in terms of the activity and then the impact on your property. But that's that South Bristol Greenway.
Okay, I guess the way that was worded in the paper or whatever the letter we got, I guess was worded where I thought it was a different trail system. It might be good for us to know. And maybe that's in our last presentation, our current trail system, like what we have, the West Davis Greenway and those stuff that we have. Was that in our last presentation as to what we have right now?
It was. If you recall, we had a summary. It was probably last summer because I know we were in a virtual format in which the consultant talked about this first phase and the concept there, gave us some preliminary budget estimates, gave us some preliminary routing that certainly needed to be nailed down more in terms of a design sense by our staff in that. But that was the conversation that we had. Gosh, it was probably summer or early fall that our consultant gave that presentation.
The last thing I was going to mention was, we used to meet our council members and commission members out of Johnson City, aldermen out of Kingsborough. We used to meet and just get together and just talk. And it was totally unofficial. There was no agenda. It was just one of those things. And actually, it was broadcast to the media so that it was, that everything along the legal lines of sunshine laws and that type of thing were addressed. But I'm curious to know if we shouldn't be doing something like that in the near future whenever the things open up, especially with our Kingsport counterparts. And, we all in Sullivan County are making, significant progress in our own respects towards CTE and towards, workplace development and that kind of thing is, and I think if, it could get way too huge, especially if you get involved with our commissioners, our Sullivan County commissioners. But, we all really need to know what everybody else is doing. And in some cases, we don't know. And I don't know if we could figure out some kind of logistics where all of our, commissioners and aldermen and council members could, and I don't want to do anything in depth. I mean, something that lasts maybe an hour, hour and a half at most, but something that kind of tells us a little bit about what everybody else is doing, especially when it comes to workforce development, and also address regionalism.
Okay. I'm making a note of that. Probably the last time we really gathered, and it wasn't in the context that you described, but the legislative agendas or the legislative policy meetings that we have with our state delegation afforded the opportunity for the city councils of Bristol, Kingsport, and Johnson City to gather informally and have a no agenda type discussion like you described. I think the last time we had anything really similar, that was actually a few years ago. And we met in Kingsport at a restaurant there. It was a very informal, just discussion with the once again, the local governing bodies of the three cities. I don't recall having a county commission from either Sullivan or Washington County involved, unless it was probably 3 years ago now. We gathered in the mezzanine at the airport and had a conversation around Aerospace Park and how do we collaboratively work on advancing this region. And that probably did involve the three local governing bodies as well as the two county commissions. But again, I think before we contemplate those, we've got to obviously get further into ending this pandemic.
I just think if each of us talk with our counterparts, mayor to mayor and council to alderman and that kind of thing, and manager to manager, just something to keep in mind, just how we may be able to do that. I mean, I just think it'd be good, especially within Sullivan County, to know where everybody is and make sure that we're standing together and collaborating and supporting each other.
And I think to that point, it would be interesting to know, because I know that John Luttrell has worked and the Department of Community Relations has worked very hard to get our information out into the public domain. And I know oftentimes I'm just not seeing it locally in our public domain. And I don't think it's because it hasn't been sent. I think it's just because maybe it hasn't been a priority to be communicated. I'm finding lots of information about, I have found several things about Bristol in the Johnson City communication as well as Kingsport communication. So I would really be interested, Mr. Sora, for us to take a look at how we're communicating, how often we have put information out to be communicated, and how often that information has actually been communicated. Several things, we talk about what's going on in all the surrounding cities and communities, and oftentimes we've already done what's being communicated and touted as, very progressive. We did it 6 months ago. And we've even had in the past 3 or 4 months programs that we've put into place being picked up almost word for word by other communities, which is a great compliment, but it's not being put out there that we're doing it. And so I would just, if there's a breakdown somewhere, if we're made aware of it, if we need to talk about it a little bit more as to how we get our story out. And like I said, I'm very well aware that John and the Department of Community Relations they've really made a big effort to get the information about Bristol out. But I agree with you, Chad. I think that we do need to be in conversation with our fellow elected legislators. But I do think that Bristol's doing a lot. I think John is putting the communication out there. I'm just curious as to how often it's actually being picked up.
We can certainly provide you with the list of releases and the subjects and even a copy of the release for that matter, and then a summary of which news media picked it up.
But if we need to do some relationship building from a council level, then let's do it and get back online with communication to a greater degree.
Keep in mind also too, we have done a really good job in the past, prior to COVID, I should say, of, connecting with our county commissioners, in particular our Bristol County commissioners and county commissioners that are close or border their areas border Bristol City, but their entire area may be in the county. That may be a way of looking at things too, as we get towards the summer months and vaccinations and, go further and further and where we can meet face to face. Maybe we can do as we've done in the past is meet with our county, counterparts, and then maybe separately we meet with our Kingsport counterparts as well. And both would be, I think both all sides of that's going to have information, probably revealing information that we don't know about or that they don't know about.
I think one thing we need to probably try to figure out, I'd heard recently that the same company on all three papers now. Need to figure out if that's true or not.
Say that again, Malin. Now,
I heard recently that the same company owns all three of the local papers now: Kingsport, Johnson City, and Bristol.
I'm not sure about that.
I think it'd be interesting if we can find that out. Just see if there's any continuity or lack of continuity there. I mean, I can call Jim myself and ask him if that's true.
Boy, silence really kills me.
Are we ready for our round? I have one announcement.
Probably, if y'all could give me some direction on the electronic meetings going forward in March. The one that's obviously we need to make the quick decision on is our March 2nd meeting. Do you want to convene in Slater, or do you want to continue to convene electronically as we have in the past? And then the next meeting after that will be our work session on the 23rd, and then whatever we work out with the property assessment office on either before or after that date. So if you could provide staff with some guidance there so we can properly advertise the meetings.
I'm good either way we do it, Bill, personally.
I have not been vaccinated, and I would prefer to go electronic for our upcoming meeting, for our upcoming March 2nd meeting.
Right.
I think we play it by when do we need to let you know on well, I guess we need to know what the governor's doing for sure.
The meetings are advertised. We just need to provide something on our website if we're doing something as far as where the meeting's being held and that type of thing. That's not something that as long as we've properly advertised the meetings, and we have for those standing meetings. If we're deviating from our normal Slater Center location, we just need to make sure that's noted on our website and our other social platforms. Is it the consensus then that we will, our meeting next Tuesday will be conducted electronically?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then then I guess and we can have more conversation next Tuesday. Yeah. Regarding our meeting for our work sessions, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity of had a conversation and pick out a date and time that Ms. Whitaker can be with us at that time also.
And Malin, to your question, Kingsport Times News and the Johnson City Press are both owned by Six Rivers Media, and the Bristol Herald is owned by Lee Enterprises.
Different.
Yep. Yep.
I would remind council of your training requirements for utility finance. And I think both Vince and Malin are current. I think the others, I think you need to get X number of hours over a particular, maybe through the end of maybe next year. I think you've got some time. I'll send you an update that Tara.
Yeah,
Tara,
I did 12 hours.
Okay. Have you made Tara aware of that, or?
I didn't know how that is followed up.
Okay, if you could just follow up with an email and that, we're required by the comptroller's office to keep track of that on your behalf. So
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it months ago.
Mayor, that's all I have. You're on mute, Mayor. There you go.
Any city council comments we need to continue with, anyone?
I'll just share that part of the Martin Luther King celebration last year, first time was an art show. We did it again this time, but virtually. And those are, so you're going to see those in the next couple of weeks. There'll be a press release going out. It'll be available digitally, so you can look at it online. And with the winners identified for each Tennessee High and Virginia High. And then they're going to be on display the month of March in the downtown windows of our downtown community. So I've seen just a quick look and some pretty impressive artwork.
Anyone else? Hearing none, I declare this meeting is, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Oh, everybody's waving. Okay.
No,
Declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good afternoon.